Hi everybody, this is Miss Dewey. Today we are going to finish talking about the human body by talking about 4 different body systems. Today we will be discussing the circulatory system, the respiratory system, the digestive system, and the excretory system, and then following that up with a discussion about homeostasis. So the first system that we are going to cover is the circulatory system, but you might also hear me or other people refer it to the cardiovascular system. These are the same system, it just has 2 different names. So the main purpose of the circulatory system is transport. It's responsible for transporting everything that your body needs or needs to get rid of to where it needs to go. So it's responsible for taking oxygen to all of your cells. It's responsible for taking carbon dioxide away from your cells. It's responsible for bringing nutrients in, taking wastes out, and it also contains immune cells that help you defend against diseases. So there are 2 main parts of the circulatory system. The main one is your heart. This is the main organ that pumps blood through your body. It keeps the whole system moving. And the heart pumps blood through your blood vessels. There are 3 types of blood vessels. We have arteries. These carry blood away from the heart. Usually it's carrying oxygenated blood, but not always. We have capillaries. These are little itty-bitty blood vessels that you can find all over your body. This is where exchange actually happens between the blood vessels and the cells of your body. So in the capillaries is where nutrients, different gases are getting exchanged from one cell to another. And finally, we have veins, which connect through to the capillaries and take blood back to the heart. So I'm talking a lot about moving blood around the body. I'm talking about oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood. So blood is really, really important in the cardiovascular system. That's because it carries chemicals and waste through the body, and it also has your immune system, your defense system. This is because of the parts that make up the blood. The biggest component of blood is plasma. This is the liquid. This is why when you bleed, it comes out like a liquid. So this is where most of the chemicals are dissolved in your blood. So all of those nutrients, all of the waste products, also carbon dioxide is found in the plasma of your blood. There are also red blood cells which carry oxygen. Oxygen is so important in the body that there's a specific cell in your blood that its only job is to carry oxygen, and those are red blood cells. We also have white blood cells, which are the body's immune cells. They'll fight off bacteria or viruses that get into your blood to keep you from getting sick. And finally, we have platelets. So if you've ever gotten a cut, it's probably formed a blood clot or a scab on the top. That's because there are little platelets in your blood, which when they get exposed to air will start to build up a scab to make sure that blood doesn't keep pouring out of your body. So I just talked about how it's so important that we have a cell just for oxygen. Well, we've actually got an entire body system that's mostly just for oxygen, and that is the respiratory system. So the respiratory system has 2 jobs. Its first job is to take in oxygen, O2, and its second job is to release carbon dioxide, CO2. And it does this through a series of pipes and tubes that go from your mouth into your lungs. So your respiratory system starts in your nose, it starts in your mouth, depending on where you're breathing in. Then the air will go down to your trachea, which is your windpipe in your throat. Then your trachea will branch off into 2 bronchi, and those 2 bronchi lead into your individual lungs. You have 2 lungs, one on each side of your body, and this is the main organ where gas exchange actually happens. And specifically inside of the lungs, we have these things called alveoli. These are little sacs in the lungs which have a bunch of blood vessels on top of them, a bunch of capillaries on top of them. And this is where you'll actually have oxygen go into the blood and carbon dioxide leave the blood. It's a really important part of both the circulatory system and the respiratory system. And finally, you have a diaphragm that sits under your lungs and helps the lungs expand and contract when you breathe in and out. I just talked about how both the circulatory system and the respiratory system, there's this big focus on oxygen. So why do we need so much oxygen? Well, the reason is that we use oxygen in cellular respiration. Hopefully you remember this from the beginning of the year when we talked about cell respiration. It happens in the mitochondria and it has this complicated equation. This equation has glucose, sugar, and oxygen coming together and making carbon dioxide, water, and most importantly, it also makes ATP, energy. Without energy, your body doesn't work. Without energy, you die. So without oxygen, you die because you don't have any energy. So these two systems work together in order to make sure that all of your cells have the oxygen that they need to do cell respiration. But the other part of this equation, the glucose, the sugar, this comes from a different system in your body. That is the digestive system. So the digestive system is involved with eating, and there are four main things that happen in the digestive system. The first thing is ingestion. This is how we get food into the digestive system. So when you eat something with your mouth, that is ingestion. Then we have digestion. Digestion is when we break down food to make it smaller. So your body cannot take an entire cookie and use it as is. It has to break it down into smaller molecules. And digestion happens in the mouth, the stomach, and the small intestine because we need to continually break down these bigger things into smaller things. Next up, we have absorption. So absorption is where we take those small molecules that we broke down with digestion and actually get them into the bloodstream. So we're connecting back to the circulatory system here. This happens in the small intestine. And finally, we have elimination or excretion. This is when the cells remove the unused molecules, and this happens in the large intestine or the anus. This is how you make poop. So the five big organs or the five big parts of the digestive system that we want to talk about. The first is the mouth. This starts the mechanical and chemical breakdown of food because you chew things up and your spit will also start to break things down. The esophagus is in your throat, and this pushes food down to your stomach through a process called peristalsis. And if you remember back when we talked about the muscular system, we talked about smooth muscle. Your esophagus is basically a big tube of smooth muscle. Next up, we have your stomach. This is where mechanical and chemical digestion continue, and it's where we start to break down proteins. Then we have your small intestine. So your small intestine is where we break down all of your food into the monomers. Remember biochemistry, we break down everything into monomers. Amino acids, monosaccharides, nucleotides, and fatty acids. And all of those molecules are absorbed in the small intestine by little structures called villi, and that brings it into the blood where it can move around your body. And finally, we have the large intestine. This is where all of the water is absorbed out of what's left, and eventually it gets eliminated through poop. So we just talked about one way that we get rid of waste in the body, but there's another way that we get rid of waste in the body, and that is through the excretory system. So when you eat something, the stuff that you don't use eventually will get filtered through your large intestine and come out as poop. But some of the cells in your body make waste on their own, and so you have to get that out in a different way. And you do that through the excretory system or the urinary system. So the way that this works is it filters out your blood and takes out all of the waste from your blood. And it takes that waste and turns it into urine, turns it into pee. And through doing this, it can also control how much water is in your body, which is very important. So the main organ of the excretory system is the kidney. These are these two beans sort of in the middle of your body, and they filter the blood, they take out all of the waste, they make the urine, and in the process, they're constantly regulating your water balance. So your kidneys are constantly making sure that you have enough water. So if you have too much water in your body, then the kidneys will sense that and they'll start to put more water in the urine. If you don't have enough water in your body, then your kidneys will try and make sure that they're putting as little water as possible into your urine. So this is why sometimes when you pee, it's a lighter color than other times. When it's lighter, that means that you're more hydrated. When it's darker, that means you're a little bit dehydrated. Then we have the ureters, which is where the urine travels from the kidneys up to the bladder. The bladder is basically just a big sac which holds all of the urine until you're ready to pee it out. And then when you actually do pee it out, it is through the urethra. So this is how your body gets rid of waste, and it's also how it maintains a balance of water. So this is just one example of how your body maintains homeostasis. Remember that homeostasis is how organisms maintain an internal balance. So your body has ideal conditions, and it always wants to make sure that it's in those conditions. So it has a specific temperature that it wants to stay at. It has a specific blood sugar level that it wants to stay at. It has a specific amount of water that it wants to have in the body. And it uses different systems in the body to make sure that it stays at that condition. So we talked a lot about body temperature. When you get too hot, you start to sweat. When you get too cold, you start to shiver. That's your body's way of making sure that you stay at a stable temperature. We also talked about managing your blood sugar. So when your blood sugar gets too high, you release insulin, which lowers your blood sugar. When your blood sugar gets too low, you'll release something called glucagon, which will raise it back up again. And to go back to some of the systems we just learned about, when you have too much water, your kidneys will filter out more water to bring your water level down. When you have too little water, the kidneys will stop putting as much water into your urine, meaning that you'll keep your water levels at a stable rate. Or to think about the circulatory system. When you need more oxygen going to your body, your heart will start to beat faster so that it can send more oxygen through your body to make sure you have the energy that you need. You'll also start to breathe more quickly for the same reason. So that wraps up the last 4 organ systems of the human body. As a reminder, we talked about the circulatory system, which is how different materials move around your body. We talked about the respiratory system, which is how you bring oxygen into your body and carbon dioxide out of your body. We talked about the digestive system, which is how we take our food and break it down into its smaller components and to bring it into the bloodstream. And then we talked about the excretory system, which is how we filter out the waste from our body. So that is all for the human body. Next week, we're going to be doing a wrap-up activity to sort of finish off all of biology. And then after that, you just have the summer to look forward to. Have a great day and stay safe, everybody.